We have been able to reach a witness to this train derailment. Daniel Konzelman witnessed that derailment, and he then jumped out of his car to try to help. We've reached him over the phone. So, Daniel, just let's start with describing what it is that you saw on your way to work this morning.
Sure, yeah. Thanks for having me on the show. Driving south on I-5, and I saw the train pass us on the right. I noticed that it was going pretty quickly, faster than any train I've ever seen heading south on those rails. And it passed us. We were going about 65 miles an hour, and it passed us. And then probably 45 seconds later, cars came to a pretty abrupt stop under that bridge, and naturally you don't really assume that there's a train derailment. So it took a minute to understand what was going on, and then I looked up towards the bridge and I saw a train car hanging off the bridge, and that's when it dawned on me oh my word, there's been a train crash. This is major. And at that point, traffic was already stacking up, and so we drove up the on-ramp to get out of traffic as fast as possible, drove up and around to the closest access point to the rails from the road we were on, parked the car. I was in a suit on my way to work, but luckily I had some work boots in the back. We threw on our work boots. Luckily I had a headlamp in the car, and we climbed down the side of the hill overlooking the Nisqually Flats down to the rails and ran as fast as we could towards the train. And nobody at that point had gotten up onto the rails to evaluate how many were injured, if there was anything on fire. And I have a history in emergency response. I'm an Eagle Scout, spent a lot of time being trained in first aid, so I knew how to kind of handle the situation to a certain degree. And so as soon as I saw that there were people injured and in shock, kind of wandering around, and still people trapped in the cars, my girlfriend Alicia Hoverson and I kind of tag teamed it, checked in with everybody, made sure that there wasn't any critical injury, and then escorted them down to the road so that first responders could treat them. We got everybody that was mobile down, and then I climbed into the cars, and thank God I had my headlamp because it was completely dark, and some of them were tipped on their sides, and some of them had caved in, and it worked my way through the train. People who were mobile, we tried to get them out of the train as best we could. We needed ladders because it was stuck up on the bridge, and then people who had neck or head injuries, we just had them stay still. There was no immediate danger because there's nothing on fire, so I just had them stay still. I tried to get somebody to stay with them and talk to them, keep them conscious, and keep them warm because a lot of them were freezing and in shock. So we just tried to comfort them as best we could. None of those were major injuries initially, and then as I got further in where the trains had kind of capsized and the roofs had kind of been torn off and people had been dumped underneath the train and were pinned, the injuries were much more severe. It took us a while to even find those people because a lot of them were sort of buried under wreckage. But after we had kind of cleared all the cars that were still intact, by that time, the fire department and police officers were starting to arrive, but they didn't really know the gravity of the situation. So the people who had been there the whole time, there's probably 3 other people like myself who just jumped right in, kind of had an idea what to do. And we showed the fire department where those people were and tried to be a communication relay between the first responders who were there and then the people who were showing up saying, hey, this is what we need. That apparently there's a tool called an airbag that they needed to put underneath the train to lift it up to get the pinned people out from under the train. And unfortunately, that same train that we were working on, I think there was at least four fatalities. So it was just try to keep your wits about you, working right next to people who are deceased, but trying to rescue the people who you hope are going to make it. And the people who are pinned, you just try to comfort them, talk to them. I was asking people, what's your kid's name? Just trying to distract them from the situation. And you're telling them, you're doing so good, and holding their hand and rubbing their back and just trying to be some element of peace and calm to just a really terrible situation. So I was glad that I got to be there. I felt honored that I was in the right place at the right time, and I saw things I've never seen a deceased person before. So I saw some things that I will probably never forget. But I would want somebody to come help me if I was in that situation. And I kind of avoided the more gnarly train cars for probably 5 or 6 minutes because I didn't really want to see what I knew was probably there. And then I was like, you know what, I have to go, because I knew that if I was pinned or trapped, I would want somebody to come help me and rescue me. And, so I went and, as I process what I saw this morning, it's kind of getting harder and harder. In the moment, I had so much adrenaline, and everything that I had learned in Boy Scouts was on the forefront of my mind, so I was able to just stay calm and focused. But my prayers are with all the people that are affected by this train crash, and I know that my brother and I were both headed south on I-5, and either one of us could have been hit by the trains, and killed. And I have so much love for my family and my brothers. I can't imagine losing any one of them in a train crash. And so I'm just thankful that none of my family was involved, but I really hurt for the people that were involved. And I'm thankful that so many people did survive, considering how major the accident was. So anyway, that's my story.
Daniel, the people on that train are so fortunate to have had you there with the skill set that you had, and I'm sure they're very grateful for the work that you did at that deadly scene. So thank you to you, and thank you for painting a clear picture for us on what exactly happened this morning south of Seattle in Washington State. That was Daniel Konzelman, and he was on the phone with me. He witnessed the crash and, as you heard, helped a number of the injured as well.